my man slammed on the brakes and narrowly averted a mashup. It got my blood boiling, but I wasn't the one driving.
Another big stylistic change.
Yeah. So this was really, well, I'll talk about it when we hear it. Izzy on the munch machine, killing it.
That pitch is down on the timpani.
Yeah. You could maybe pause the end of this phrase. I'll just talk about the beginning of that a little bit.
Right now?
You're right there. Yeah.
Yep. Spacebar does work.
So
noted.
So this whole thing, obviously, in the narrative is where like this guy in the sports car cut us off, kind of thing. I wasn't, got my blood boiling, but I wasn't the one driving. So there's like so he kind of defers to this guy, the guy who's driving him, but he's also kind of, angry at this moment. So there's like a little bit of angularity. It's also the moment where the kind of the spokes and this abstracted kind of automotive like prop comes across, rolling prop comes across the field. So I had the advantage of kind of like knowing what that looked like, I think, before I wrote this, or like at least with the sketches of that kind of set piece and the rolling prop kind of was. So like kind of like that whole beginning was like my interpretation or accompaniment texturally of what that prop looked like. It was like kind of car sounds, metallics, things that spun, kind of circular, kind of things like that. Like there's that, like the rototom, like the spoke thing that spun, that had that kind of,
yeah.
You spun it. I mean, I learned that from Neil Larrabee, obviously. It brought the cadets. We did that. They did that in the 90s. And it was like but it was really cool to create those sounds like acoustically. And I just remember especially like that sound. I remember it was like his front ensembles being so colorful and very like vibrant that way. But it's just one of those things that kind of fit. It was really cool to do those sounds acoustically rather than create them from an electronic perspective.
I love that.
Yep,
It's just so much creativity and yeah.
I think what does it for me so much in this show is just all the different sounds that come together. It just spans the whole soundscape, so many implements, so many different things, the interplay between all the different sections, and the way it's just. And
like I've done my share of just like battery arranging, but the front ensemble stuff just always blows me away because there's so many options. Not even just within like the keyboards and the mallet selection and this and that, but just all the accessories that you can just utilize to your advantage. And I just really love when people get creative. And it's like, man, I haven't seen somebody play a rototom in quite a while or something.
Well, sometimes it's about like limiting your options too. Like in this section, like I knew, okay, like it's metallic, it's angular, it's these things, and it's like, and I don't really hear keyboard sounds in here, like for most of this tune. So maybe we just don't do that. We just play 3 chords of this tune without hearing a keyboard sound. We had timpani, which was tonal, but like everything else it was concert toms, it was like cymbal stacks, it was marching machine. There were three different concert snares around the front. It was all orchestral / kind of, folio effect, kind of like color of things that was happening on the field. So that was kind of the parameter that you kind of created, like you were saying about so many possibilities. Sometimes it's just about deciding on what your world is you're living in, and just trying to be like max out that kind of world,
right?
Rather than going.
That makes sense.
Like, yeah. So that's kind of where the first half of this section, at least, kind of came from.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Let's spacebar action.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's
shots.
One of the best down the line snare shots. Trade off like just down the line, ping, 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 ping. The quality between each individual player, you always hear those differences, but I hear the least differences in that one. It smacks me in the face every time I heard it all season. It's one of the best ones I've ever heard.
Pretty good at it.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was first time it happened, it just went, Jesus.
I remember writing it, and I was like, "Nah, it's probably not going to happen." But like, at least look at the idea.
Well,
look at the idea that like something visual should happen here, or like just like a little flare at the end of the part in some way.
It's a testament of one, because usually when you do like the snare split thing, you hear you can tune snare drums and get them real close, but when you do one after the other like that, you're going to slightly hear a little bit of variation, but it works when they're all playing together. But a testament to the tuning and how close it was to sound that good, and the hand pressure of the shot from every snare drummer down the line to be able to keep it that consistent from player to player. That's what is the most impressive thing about it to me.
Bass drummers are over here like, yo, bro, what do you think we do?
Well, no, I know the sound quality thing, but they're tuned to different tones. You're supposed to hear a different tone.
There is a little more forgiveness.
Yeah. When you're on the snare drum, it's supposed to all be the same, but you always hear that slight difference every time a group does it. Yeah. But this is the
kind
best.
Of finishing this phrase in the same, like it starts with kind of like, so like the wind material here, the horns, they had this bump, 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 bump thing was like incessant, like through this part. So, and those became loops at a certain point. We sampled them. They became electronic and kind of, it's in and out of that kind of thing. And right there, the beginning of that last phrase when the snares enter, they become essentially the rhythm of the loops. It's colored, or it's provided in the synth and like the sampled voice, but they're dut, jut, dut, jut, dut, jut, dut, which is split themselves. So like every other bar had like some sort of split effort in it. So that was like the culmination of that kind of idea of a phrase.
Yep. It worked.
So, yep.
All right, I want to hear it again because I'm about it.
Puppet snare to splits.
Every time.
I can hear the winds in my head.
Yep, me too.
Wind, brass, same thing.
Sophie. Great performer.
She's vibing it.
Oh yeah, she's always performing. God, Sophie. That's the first time we heard keyboards in the tune, right there. Kind of build this energy at the very end. Very
full vertical moment. Then just really drop the space out of nowhere.
Yep.
Yep.
I love that whole chunk. Just feels good.
Yeah, so wouldn't you know it, we pulled right up behind that cat at the light, and there he was, glaring at us through his rear view. He was all
Place
like,
that left high
that's right, I
double.
cut you off.
So difficult.
What are you gonna do about it?
Really proud of this phrase.
So I said to Lou Reed / Dennis Hopper, I'll just call him Lou now. Man, aren't you gonna say something to that guy?
Dude, the timing of the shot. That guy.
Stop right there, maybe. We can talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
But that was one of those that was like, so that whole phrase with just voice and battery was like, that's one of those, like, if we watched a lot video, it'd be like, the voice is all like part of the snare line at that point, or part of the battery at that point, really. So it's hard to talk about one without the other for me. So like to actually like craft that, like we kind of like edited the narrative down to what we wanted it to be. And then the idea was to use the battery themselves as a transitional device, but also like a feature kind of thing and just creating, again, that parameter of just like voice and battery, and like how creative can we be within that, which was really exciting, honestly. My tendency would be to like at certain points, like throughout the year, like especially early on, was like, all right, we have these drum set players, we have like the stuff, we could like color little simple things here and there, and like we could max this out or make it bigger, but I'm kind of glad we didn't, because that retained a bit more purity, I think, than the way that it was presented, just with voice, just with the battery ensemble.
Very exposed.
Yeah, so I think it was just a different thing, and I, kind of tried to produce it without using the at least familiar techniques, like in terms of more robust kind of orchestration, do it more expressively, I think, in that marriage between the spoken word and the textures of the battery. So it kind of starts with like a rhythmic rub. It's like that bump, 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 bump. You hear the bass drums stay in duple. Tenor snares kind of have this like quarto triplet thing, and then the isolated left hand, which kind of becomes a foreshadowing of some things later, but really playing with like kind of longer like sounds, like the decrescendos. There's triplet roll at like 192, then 5-lit roll, 9-lit roll, just like subtle differences in kind of effort and sustain that hopefully like create that sense of like just undulating underneath and kind of weaving within and above and around kind of the vocal.
That's pretty sick.
And just a couple different times in there, like where you wanted like think of a kind of a decrescendo right hand. What are you going to do about it? Like kind of like things like that. We try to line up like that, and then say something to that guy. That was my single favorite measure of the show. Say something to that guy, and when that shot like lines up, which it did 99.9% of the time with the vocal, it was just it's a really cool moment. The resonance of the rim shot, little space after it.
Yeah.
The way it lines up with the voice. So
I saw several people talking about that, just like lining up that shot with that vocal, that narrative.
I was really tickled that people actually noticed that because it didn't happen for a long time, or at least to my knowledge. And it was like, spent a lot of time getting there. Like it was important to me, but like you have a lot of those things over the years that are like important to you and nobody, it's not they don't care. It just doesn't resonate the same way.
Yeah.
It's like,
back up just a
little
little
else
bit,
notices like unprompted. It's like, oh, cool. Like I guess we communicated a little bit.
I think I'm in the middle of that snare phrase. This should be back far enough.
What are you gonna do about it? So I said to Lou Reed / Des Hopper, I'll just call him Lou now. Man, aren't you gonna say something to that guy?
These are these kind of major minor chords from the original Tame the Dragon. It was like,
man, the only way I'm gonna put something out there like that is if I'm ready to dance with that kid. You know what I mean?
Obviously, a transition texturally here. And
you put something out there, there's consequences, you know?
That snare phrase was a little bit of a combination between myself and Sebastian in the snare line.
And remember,
nice.
Yep. I sent him some ideas. I was like, hey, man, you guys are right there on the drill. Let's do something.
I love that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Just the journey of this show musically is just so intriguing the whole time. Like as it moves from moment to moment, phrase to phrase.
Yep. Yeah, the variety of the narrative really allowed us to kind of explore whatever we wanted to.
Yeah.
But the main thing was variety, and the main thing was creating contrast with these parts of his subconscious, essentially. That sounds really heavy, but really it's just
not at all.
Different stuff. Tenor phrase coming in.
Nice 6 strokes in the middle of that.
Ooh, that brr, brr.
Yeah.
Yeah, great phrase for them.
Tasty.
This is the guitar solo right here. So a little minimal in texture.
Did you guys have any anticipation that the guitar would become as big of a thing as it did?
I mean, not really, but kinda. It was like
they knew what they were doing.
Well, not. So this tune was probably in March at some point or early April kind of thing. We were kind of like writing this tune in earnest. And I remember Doug sent like a sketch of this back half of the tune. We had talked about using Ryan he's an amazing performer. He's a mellophone player in the core. He's also a piano performance major at Berkeley. Like he does like all kinds of stuff.
But he's okay.
Yeah, he sings, plays piano. I think tap dances. He's
all of it.
Multi-talented performer for sure. So we knew he obviously had skills. That way, Doug sent him some information as far as like a lead sheet kind of thing for what this could be. It's like, hey, what would you do here? Kind of thing. And then he sent back. They traded some files back and forth, and we kind of quickly knew that we had something there. Like Doug sent him something that was very cool, and then he sent something back that was cooler.
I love that.
And then gave him a few kind of like guide words of like things to listen to and like influences, and So yeah, we knew it was going to be a thing, kinda, but you never quite know with that. It could come off as, depending on how it's presented, or it could be cheesy. It could be the coolest thing ever. Or a little bit of both. Who knows? But really took on a really special kind of place in the show, obviously, and a place in the drum corps season overall. So
yeah, for sure. Drum corps history.
Yeah.
I would say like that moment from this year, the guitar and then the cello thing from the Troopers are just very innovative things that stood out as like, I've never seen that before, and they were done really well.
Yep. It comes down to having a fantastic performer that can really own that stage.
Yeah.
And be consistent.
Right.
Fill the space. Handle the moment.
And also just from a performance quality standpoint, just have like a kind of an ability to communicate with the audience beyond what they're doing with their instrument. It was really...
He definitely could do that.
Really
it was very
watch.
fun.
Yeah,
it was very, very entertaining.
So this part is kind of that build up of the training between the guitar and the trumpets. It's very, vibe motors, like a dreamy quality, shakers, background. It was really, it was one of my favorite parts of the show to write, honestly. It was because it was just about writing good music. It wasn't trying to satisfy a narrative. It wasn't trying to do anything else. It was, okay, how would you support this best musically? And just, kind of bring it home at the very end. So this was really fun to write. So
let's enjoy
let's
it.
Keep rolling.
Yep. Or cross sticks for you too. There you go.
Good thing we're shooting a roll.
The background 16ths.
The interplay between the keyboards and the flat line right there.
Yeah.
Clarity between the notes is very enjoyable.
It's all about just drum set and filling up the end of the chart. Yeah. So they performed the heck out of that. There was times where that was like those rim shots and hopping in the air and just like the retard of that moment. There's so much space between the beats.
The energy gets you. You just get into it so much. And...
Yep. I think the color guard was like rehearsing the exact same part at the same time. Right here, it was like a click at the exact same tempo.
Yeah.
I remember sending Tommy Rome down to like yell at them.
I'm making a recording here.
We I think Tommy and I looked at each other and he's like, "You want me to go down there and say something?" I'm like, yeah.
I could just see Tommy just trucking it down the field.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all in.
Now I realize that.
So this was the three of the tenors were vocoder. You see the mic pack there on Jay.
He was kind of a bad influence.
They had some of that pizzicato string stuff. It was kind of far back in the field as far as the original version.
Yeah, they were back on the prop.
Yeah, so it was a mix of kind of like brush texture and like, so he's activating all those kind of, pizzicato string textures that kind of binded all that together before the kind of acapella horns and timpani thing. I don't think the timpani version's in here. We didn't do that for the percussion run through, just the pit run through. So yeah, it's the part 5 here. This was actually going to be the beginning of the 2020 show.
Oh, really?
This chart right here, yeah. So I've been writing this for like 3 years.
Fun fact.
How many times did you change it?
I mean, I left it alone for about a year and then came back to it. They got a version of it at the January camp, and then another version in May for sure. And then it kept evolving. But some of the hardest stuff, just from a combined like skill set perspective, just keyboard coverage, harmonic exposure. I think in terms of there's nowhere to hide in here in terms of wrong notes. It's all extremely exposed, and Blue Pit just owned that moment.
Yeah, but maybe like that crazy dude
Yeah,
it was one of the more special moments for me.
They really liked it on the
Like you
tapes.
got this one part of you that watches out for you.
Much appreciated. This moment was always intriguing too. To add in.
Can you stop here, maybe?
Yeah, they added in differently, right? For those that haven't noticed, like they all had a different, like from right to left, it was different.
Yeah. So back up to that front ensemble moment, just to put a bow on that too. Yeah, it was one of those like it kind of went from like our most like lush and kind of connected and legato and those kind of moments and very tuneful to like pretty much displaying every technique that we kind of do, like not intentionally necessarily, but just kind of evolved that way. It was never like that's just kind of the form of the tune too. It was never intended to be like just for a costume change. It ended up facilitating that costume change for the whole corps, I guess. But it was just a cool moment of front ensemble for about a minute of the show with color guard, and it was just a different moment for us, a different way to kind of structure like a ballad, because we had that kind of like minute and a half of brass before this, and then kind of the front ensemble took the second half of that and transitioned us into this last part of the show. So just kudos to the Blue Pit on the performance of that just all year, and just the achievement of it. It was really special for me. So the ad thing here, so this went on a couple different versions too, because there's like an intentional kind of like rub like written into it. So essentially what I wrote originally was, so you see Sebastian's like, he's on the 50, he's like pulled out. I had him start like by himself, like a 5-lit roll. So this is all at 176, I think. A 5-lit roll with like no checkpoints in it. It was just like a 5-lit roll for like this whole phrase essentially. So it was just him. But the idea of like everybody kind of waking up individually with those kind of like digging about things from that transition earlier in the show, those left hand kind of 9-lit partials. So they all have that kind of like, so it's a 5-lit roll against like a 9-lit partial, which obviously doesn't line up. The drum staff was kind of looking at me like, what do you want me to do with this? You know, like kind of, they were very cool about it. But this was kind of the compromise we came to. There's like checkpoints in the 5-lit roll, because that was way too long to have them just like a roll with no kind of foothold.
Latch.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't end up changing the intent at all. It was just more of it was one of those things where you design it like a certain way, like here's what I'd like for it to happen. And then Roger goes and works with it and goes, okay, here's what we can do. You know, like here's what's possible. And then maybe you meet in the middle, or you meet somewhere, but this is what it ended up being. So there are moments like there's this 5-lit roll that's at pianissimo, right? After they play their like digga thing, they add into that 5-lit roll kind of at the edge. And then by the end of this phrase, they all lock into that. Then it's a triplet roll, and then it's obviously normal playing after that. But it was one of those kind of like where you have to live in those moments where there's like a little bit of texture created by a rhythmic rub, right? That 5-lit 16th against the 9-lit. But it's the volume, and it's the commitment, it's the style, it's all those things that kind of make the part maybe hopefully more than just rhythm and just clean and vertical. It makes it like interesting from a textural standpoint. So that was the whole idea.
Yeah, when you're really going for it from an intent standpoint of, all right, we have to intentionally make it sound the way we want it to, but then it has to be right. So there has to be like a happy marriage of like, we hear the rub, but then it settles in. So we're like, oh, okay, I understand that it was intentional because you didn't just attack that bad.
It took a little explanation, and it was on the performers and also on the staff to make it convincing too. Like there were two different things happening. So you can't do those things like halfway. It has to look like it's going to rub too. Like it has to be so convincing and overt that it's like that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes sense. All right, we got this last. I think there's looks like 2 minutes left in this video. Let's knock this out.
Keeps you steady. And this other part that's raging, full of anger. Like old Lou and the crazy dude in the dream.
Themes in the front ensemble from earlier in the show.
But they're all a part of it. The dragon is crazy, dude. And if you don't watch out, he'll bite you hard. See, Lou knows about the dragon. He's there to set you straight. You don't try to kill the dragon. You want to make friends with it. Harness its power so you can use it.
All vertical 16 comes back. Right?
So cool.
That is a long phrase.
Yeah, such a long phrase to maintain that.
Woo!
Quad killing on the fifth here. That part was insanely difficult. I'll talk about this soon.
Just builds. A really long phrase.
I have to say that's the end of this. That's the end of the show.
Yep.
Obviously, percussion parts and books are written to be played together. It's written to make sense together as one cohesive thing, interplaying with each other. But this is one of those that really has to be heard together, man. It's so interesting. It's so cool to listen to. Like, yeah, hyped a lot videos, hear the clean rolls, but like, it's a whole nother level of appreciation for what's going on. Like, just that last phrase there, the 16ths on the marimbas, on the boards, just the length of that and the interplay and what's going on behind it and lining that all up and the intricacy of it all. This really is a package you have to appreciate and watch together. And I mean, that's the goal for everyone every year with every show they write, because again, you're judging the overall show. But man, it's an experience to watch this. Like, I'm gonna go back and watch. I get to watch it again when I edit this. I'm actually excited to do so. Usually, I look forward to that anyway, and like seeing what we talked about and just reliving it. But it's cool as hell.
Thanks for watching it this way. It helps me talk about the show too, because it's hard for me to talk about one of them in a vacuum, just because of the way that I have, wrote it, I guess. But yeah, so that whole thing at the very end of the show, like that, should also say that all that 16th material, that kind of static, like stacked harmony kind of 16th stuff, and the end of the show, that was from it's a percussion ensemble piece called Liminality by Dave Hall. He's a professor at North Texas now, but amazing piece of music, really difficult and really just engaging textures, harmonic kind of twists and turns that really fit well with kind of just the energy of the end of the show. But yeah, all that stuff is, again, it's like it really fit with like kind of staying like kind of static from a rhythmic standpoint, or not moving around so much and letting the voice kind of come through and be its own thing. Learned a lot about how to integrate those things together throughout this whole process. But again, just thank you for watching it as a whole package, because that was again, it's easier for me to talk about it that way, for sure.
Oh, totally understand.
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here and watch YouTube videos of drum lines and like.
Yep.
I like that too. For sure.
Yeah,
it's a good time for sure.
But it definitely changes the whole.
Yeah.
The holistic approach and just the way you ingest the show when you watch it as a full package.
Sure.
The front just adds so much. Even like I alluded to earlier, watching the standstill, when it's just the drumline and the brass, you just lose a very vital texture of the ensemble. Yep. That adds so much, obviously layering to what's going on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't write that way. I mean, I write, it's a keyboard voice and a battery voice, and mirrored together, and then it's like you fill in the things in between, or usually that's the way it goes. There's like a primary thing in each one, or it's always linked.
It would be the same if I listened to the keyboards and the brass without the drums, or any combination of the 2 out of 3. I think it just would not sound like you want it to.
Yep.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
Dude, so much good stuff there. Congratulations. I mean, I guess I can't say watch it without us jabbering too, because it's not on YouTube, but
it
will be eventually. So when it's up there, I will add the link to it in our video description.
Exclusivity.
Yes, 100%. But I do encourage people that have watched this, once this comes out from the Bluecoats team, I am going to add the link to the video description here, and I encourage you, after, especially too, you listen to this, you hear all of Tom's insight, us go back and forth about these things, point out this, point out that. Go back after that's been pointed out and watch it without us, and just truly just enjoy it, take it in, appreciate it for what it is, and the level of excellence that was achieved, because they were good. Like Tom said earlier too, ton of good groups this year, but as an alumni, I'm super happy that it happened. Super happy that it won that Sanford, first one in Bluecoats history, and I think I said it on our finals recap podcast. Well deserved. I think you all were the most consistent. You peaked. You gave it that extra 10% going into finals week, where some others might have dropped off a little bit, and you all just stayed the course, worked hard, had an amazing vehicle, and it just really took it across the finish line, and was amazing to watch and kind of take in.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. It was a fun ride. I mean, congrats to all the groups. I mean, for sure. Like, it was just a great season. It was great to be out there with everybody, and can't wait till 2023. So
yeah,
and thank you guys for doing this and giving an avenue for all of us to come talk about. The stuff we do in the summer, and it's great, the service you provide, and the outlet, and more importantly, I think just the information that gets shared and gets put out there, and
transparency and just the educational things that are
it's fun for us,
conveyed. Man. Yeah, and I was saying there's some selfishness to it too. We just enjoy doing this. Like, obviously, we're glad it adds stuff to the community, and we love that and cherish that side effect. But selfishly, like, we just get to hang out with all you guys and just like learn so much and talk and chill, and it's a blast.
Well, you're filling certainly a need, I think, in our community for sure, because there's not many things like this. So
appreciate it for sure. All right, I've got nothing else. Tom, Evan, you guys got anything?
I'm good, bro.
All right.
Good.
Everybody, I forgot to say it at the beginning. That's 2 videos in a row. I'm slacking. Head over to LoneStarPercussion.com. Use the discount code aged out. Save yourself $10 on your $50 or more. There's the shill speech, whatever. Go check out social media, Facebook, Instagram. Check out the other YouTube content we put out. We talked to Angst already about the season. We talked to Macintosh. Be on the lookout. We have some stuff coming. We're in talks with Lauren Teal, talking about Troopers. We're talking to, we've reached out to Scott Johnson and talked to him. We're going to schedule that one. We're going to schedule Rudy Garcia, who's basically running the Blue Devils battery at this point. Who else have we talked to? Is there anybody else we have on the docket, Evan? Oh, Colin McNutt. We're going to hang out with him, watch some Boston, dig into things. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to have a bunch of stuff coming over the next weeks and months and whatever. But yeah, it's been a blast. I'm done yammering, jabbering, whatever you want to call it.
Thanks, Sanford 2022, Bluecoats Percussion.
100%. See everybody next time.
Peace.
Peace.